Hi guys, Adam here as per usual. Thanks so much for continuing to check out the videos. How was your weekend? Have you been working on the lick that I showed you on Friday? I hope you have. Keep your comments coming, post your video responses. I do watch them all and I do try and comment on them as well. I really appreciate that, guys. So, I hope you've had a great Monday. It's time to answer another one of your questions. Thanks, keep them coming in, guys. And this week, I'm going to be answering a question from NorwayIsAwesome. I tend to agree. I've never been to Norway before, but when I've seen pictures and stuff on TV, on the internet, it looks like a really, really nice place. If that's where you're actually from, my friend, and I assume you are, congrats to you, I guess. Get me over your gaff for a pint or a cup of tea and show me the fjords, as it were. That sounded weird. Okay, so NorwayIsAwesome asks me, can you give us a summary of your quest for tone? Where did you begin? What guitars and amps did you start with? Has your choice of gear changed together with your musical influences? Could go on for ages with this, so I'll try and do it as quick as I can. So I started off, I was quite lucky. You guys have seen it. It's not at hand, or I'd show you. I started off with a Westbury or Westfield? I'm sure it's a Westbury Standard. It was a very decent guitar to start on, you know. It's since become a bit of a Frankenstein and become now a fretless. But a very good guitar to start on, and along with the Fender Frontman sort of 15 practice amp. That to me was great, you know. And then I got a Silvertone Paul Stanley Apocalypse about 6 months later, because it was spiky and I had spiky hair and I liked heavy metal, or at least what I thought was heavy metal. I had no idea who Paul Stanley is. I thought he must have been some brutal death metal guy to have such a brutal death metal looking guitar. Yeah. Get into a lot more metal and started playing, and to be honest, I was kind of happy as Larry for a good, oh God, I can't even remember, a couple of years, I think. And then when I started getting serious and I realised, actually, you know what it is? I'm starting to play all right. I'm getting a decent player, still obviously a beginner, but I can play a few licks, some songs, etc. By a couple of years, I was getting decent, you know. I then bought a Marshall AVT 275, I believe. It was a really great amp. It was solid state with, I think it had one preamp valve or something like that for a bit of the dirt in the dirt channels. I gigged it a few times and it was perfect. It held its own. It was a really, really decent amp. People are generally against valve state. I'll give anything a go, and it was a really, really decent amp. I enjoyed that. And the step up in tone was monumental. I then got my Ibanez RG 550 EGK, I think it was. And the GK was for Galaxy Black or something like that. I no longer have that guitar. I don't really regret selling it. That became a bit of a Frankenstein as well. It had frets scalloped, it had all kinds of electronics rewiring and jumbo frets put on. But then I actually discovered I really hate Floyd Roses and floating bridges or ball ache. And 24 frets was something about the 23rd and 24th fret that just kind of, I didn't get it, I didn't like it. So I sold that. I got the Hughes and Kettner trilogy as well. God, how long ago was that? That must have been 8 years, 7, 8 years, something like that, I think. And yeah, those have been then my main guitars and main amp for the last sort of 4 or 5 years, the Sir and the Hughes and Kettner. And then recently when I got the Ibanez 18 months ago, them two guitars and the amps being kind of the main stay piece of the rig, if you like. Yes, my tone has kind of changed as my influences have developed. So I went through a massive kind of Eric Johnson and Sean Lane stage where I wanted that kind of dumbly, you know, 10-ton violin kind of sound, really smooth, really sustained. And then as I've got into more progressive metal and progressive rock, I've wanted a sort of tighter sound. I'd say my lead tone kind of gets modelled on. It's a bit of a cross between Holsworth and Petrucci, I would say. But of course, I also like George Bellis a lot, and I quite like George Bellis's tone, how it's basically guitar, sometimes an overdrive pedal, amp, and then in the kind of recording, you might put a bit of delay, a bit of reverb on it, and it's not that much gain, it's kind of pure volume, and it's really crunchy and really clean, so I quite like that tone as well. I think the quest for tone's a funny one, isn't it? Because as you get a better player, you kind of get more interested in sound and the sound of the guitar, basically. Yet you know all this music theory, you know your modes, and you can create really interesting music, but then you want your guitar to sound a certain way as well, and most instrumentalists are like that. I find violinists are really, really picky about that tone. I don't really know what else to say. Yes, my tonal changes have changed as I brought new influences into my music? Of course it has, because you try to sort of emulate that person or that band or that genre's sound a little bit more. Bits of it's a bit EJ, a bit Sean Lane, a bit kind of Petrucci, a bit Holsworth. I take influences from everywhere. I think at the moment my biggest kind of tone influence, if you like, is Petrucci, purely because the band that I'm in at the moment, Corinthia, we have a Dream Theater-ish kind of vibe, so I'm modelling my tone a bit on that. Really interesting question, really enjoyed answering that one. Norway is awesome. Why don't you post your own video response or post in your comments, how has your tone changed over time? How has different influences brought different kind of tonal variations to your sound? And as ever guys, until next time, keep the questions coming. Take it easy.